Hi, this is Natalie Lander, voice of Kinsey, Tara Branford, Stargirl, and many others. You are listening to a W2Mnet podcast. You can visit W2Mnet.com for other podcasts about entertainment, video games, sports, and wrestling.
The Kickoff. What's your fantasy? Good evening, afternoon, whenever you happen to be.
What the hell are you doing, Harry? This ain't Wednesday night.
You know, the calendar did look a little weird now that you mention it.
Yeah. So, what is your fantasy here presented by the Kickoff? It's the usual host of characters. You did already heard the voice of reason, Harry Broadhurst, and now followed up by one of my so-called best friend. It's the Black Plague, Erik Watkins. And, of course, everybody knows me as the Unprofessional and the chairman here at W2N. I'm Jason Teasley, and I want to welcome you guys to the first episode of The Kickoff Presents What's Your Fantasy here on the W2M network. You know, Harry, Erik, you guys want to know, it's a little weird to be doing a fantasy football podcast here on W2M. I mean, I feel like 4 years in the making.
I feel like this ship was attempted to be sailed a while ago.
Let's think about it. We all had the idea. We all thought it was worth it. You only had to find an executive producer who could actually show up and help keep things going. That's why I'm here.
Well, it's weird to me because since this is the introductory episode, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of backstory. Initially, this was its sole reason I joined the W2M network is because the head honcho Sean approached me after hearing my fantasy football podcast on another network, said he wanted to bring a fantasy football cast to W2M. So I was presented the opportunity. I had a co-host, set everything up, and never got off the ground. And then one night, Sean had a conflict in his schedule, and he said, "Hey, I have a little show that there's a fantasy, there's an NFL podcast that I want you to join. I think you'd fit in with everybody." And it was the birth of me on the Kickoff. And that's how I met Harry. That's how I met Erik. And we'll just leave it at that. It was an extraordinary introductory episode, if I do recall. It ended on a high note. So, that's just a little backstory. I do want to welcome everybody here to What's Your Fantasy here on the W2M network. So we're going to talk some fantasy football. It is a passion of mine. Pretty much, if anybody knows me on a personal level, knows that I am all about fantasy football, whether it's daily, it's dynasty, redraft. I run about 26 leagues. I'm in about 26 leagues across everything. And according to my wife finances that she adds up every year, I'm about $2,000 plus that I spend on fantasy football. But I digress. So we're going to start this episode with our main segment, our first segment of the evening. It's called New Lineup, Who Dis? Where we present you our favorite waiver wire pickups for the week after week one of the NFL season. I want to kick us off and let you lead us into this, Harry. So it's a new lineup. Who dis? Who you got?
First of all, in order to kind of give a little bit of a backstory here as well, fantasy football player for the better part of the last decade or so, former W2M League champion, might I add, as well, back when the W2M network had a league.
I was the last champion.
You were, because Sean decided not to renew the league. And to answer your statement about the original episode of the Kickoff that you did, Jason, we left them hanging on every word.
That is correct.
It's available in the archives if you want to go check it out. All right. Anyway,
just preface, when actually was my W2M debut? That was
late regular season 2017.
Maybe. No, it was 2016. It was December 2016.
Was it in December or was it the start of the new year?
I think it was the playoff. It was a playoff podcast or the Super Bowl preview. It was a Super Bowl preview.
See, that tells me 2017. Yeah.
Yeah, Super Bowl 2017 preview. Yeah, that was because we was talking about Aaron Hernandez. Yep.
All right. So to answer your question as far as new lineup, who dis? Nyheim Hines, running back, Indianapolis. Technically the number 2 back in Indianapolis now. Don't give me no shit, Jason. I know we had this discussion earlier. However, in his first game of the regular season, Nyheim Hines had 8 targets with 8 catches for 45 yards and a touchdown, 7 carries for 28 yards and a touchdown as well, which in most leagues with a PPR, you're looking at 14, 20, 24 and a half, 30 and a half. You're looking at about 33 points from Hines from the 2 score.
He had a pretty solid day.
And not only that, his workload is only going to increase now that Marlon Mack has torn his ACL and is out for the rest of the season. Despite the fact that he is RB2 in Indianapolis, odds are Jonathan Taylor's probably owned in most of the leagues. I would imagine Nyheim Hines wasn't, but should be going forward. Erik, new lineup. Who dis?
Yeah, well, let's face it. As I deal with one of arguably the most trash NFL organizations, sometimes you can rummage through that garbage and get yourself a pretty nice shiny object. In this case, Laviska Shenault. Now, everybody hear me out. As someone who has been playing fantasy football for just over 20 years, I have won multiple championships across platforms. The only one that I haven't won on is Yahoo. And yes, that even goes back to when AOL did fantasy football. Thank you, Antonio Gates. But anyways, I digress. Take it from me that even though you really don't want to have to suffer through being a Jaguars fan that I am, look at someone like Shenault and incredible fantasy value. I mean, just while Minshew was spreading the wealth yesterday against that Colts defense, Shenault had himself, 3 catches on 4 targets, 37 yards, but a touchdown, and also had 2 carries for 10 yards as well. So, given the kind of fluidity at a running back situation with Jacksonville, if Minshew keeps finding this level of consistency, granted, he won't go 19 for 20 every week, but expect Shenault to really settle into potentially a wide receiver 2 position.
I'm going to go with a little deeper dive. I've actually got 2 players, but I'm going to start off on this one that is from a highly talented offense that fell flat on their face, but they did have a bright spot. Everybody looks to the 2 top name receivers, the Hall of Fame quarterback and the tight end that come out of retirement who fell flat on his face and did not look in football shape. So my first new lineup who dis pickup is Scott Miller from the Tampa Bay Bucks, who is that prototypical white slot receiver, possession receiver that Brady is used to throwing to. He went for 73 yards in the loss, 5 catches for 73 yards, which, I mean, a lot of people will be like, oh, that's mediocre. But you also got to look. You also have Mike Evans, Godwin, and Gronkowski, as well as O.J. Howard, also in that offense. So the Snags 5 catches for 73 yards is pretty impressive. Now the second one is a gentleman that I've been very high on since way back in the day. Coming into the season, a lot of people had, and we'll talk about this segment. It's our next segment, but a lot of people were thought that Austin Eckler was the wide receiver, being the running back one in the Chargers backfield. But I said, oh, no. This is a new lineup. Who this? So this is one waiver wire that I highly suggest people jump on because he is going to be the starter. He will take over that starting position for the Chargers backfield by midseason, and that's Joshua Kelly. He went for 60 yards and a touchdown. Everybody talks about how Eckler was the man, and Kelly came in. He's a rookie. He's got he checks off all the boxes. He's a deep dive, and I highly look for him to flourish even more. Now, do you guys have anybody else that you're trying to grab off the waiver wire?
The other name that sprung out to me was the Los Angeles Rams and Malcolm Brown, who scored twice.
Yes, with Gurley out of the Rams' backfield, everybody looked to Cam Akers to, just come in and immediately take over that running back one position. But I see that there is some competition. He carried the team well. He looked good, scoring, hitting the hole well. So yeah, that's I'm pretty sure that depending on how deep your league is, you could take a look and scour that. Definitely get in a waiver wire from him. For him, I think all these are nice additions. Eric, do you have anybody else you want to tag along?
Well, I would say, because I don't know, even with his history in Washington, I don't know if that many people would have had a chance to really keep them on now that he's in Detroit. But a little bit of a bigger name who had a surprisingly good day, especially to me, would be the quasi-ageless wonder Adrian Peterson. Yes, while you're going to have Detroit still roll around with a Matt Stafford-based throwing offense, and yes, of course, Swift, hands and all, I really think with Peterson, he's going to be much more efficient. So, not quite RB1, but if you've got a deep league or in a flex position, he's worth looking at more after this near 100-yard day this week.
Yeah.
93 yards for Adrian Peterson here, coming off of a late addition to the Detroit Lions, because I think he was one of the last-minute cuts by the Washington Redacteds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, the only thing that scares me about Peterson is that backfield is extremely crowded. So if you are in a deep league and you can stash him, I highly recommend that, you do stash Peterson. Now, with us covering our waiver wire pickups with new team who dis, now I want to move on to something, I don't want to be so positive. Everybody knows me. I'm kind of an asshole. So I want to be the conductor of this. And so we're going to chug-a-lug-a-lug on down and hop upon the hype train. Now, just a preference, our hype train is those players that were ass week one, just straight up ass. That could have cost you your matchup, those marquee players that you look at that you lean on, that you're, first, second round picks that you build your team upon and you want to succeed. Now, Harry, who are you bringing along with you on the hype train?
Are we going to talk about the one who actually did cost me the game, or the one that would have cost me the game had I actually started him?
Well, we'll tackle
two.
both of them.
I have two, but I don't want to take somebody else's pick.
I've got plenty to choose from.
Yeah, and I've got a big one that, yeah, somewhat out of left field, but important.
10 carries, 29 yards, no receptions for a grand total of 2.9 fantasy points. How explicitly F-bomb are we going to be on this show?
You're gonna let them fly. You've got me and Eric. We don't. You know, if you know me and Eric well enough.
Absolutely shit running back court led by my second round pick, Mark Ingram of the Baltimore Ravens.
He was a
Speaking of new lineup, who dis? I don't think we mentioned J.K. Dobbins.
Dobbins is snagged in a lot of leagues.
Mm-hmm.
Looking across the waiver wire, Dobbins has been picked up in a lot of leagues. He was typically a draft day addition in just about any league that I was a part of.
And for those who are in dynasty leagues with taxi squads, he was snagged up there too.
So Mark Ingram was the one who actively started, who played a hand in costing me this matchup. The one who would have cost me this matchup had he not been left on my bench, 5 carries for 5 yards, 1 catch for 14 yards. That is a combined score on Yahoo's standard scoring of 2.9 points. For the Golden Hype, the former Jacksonville Jaguar turned Tampa Bay Buccaneer, Leonard Fournette.
I mean, it's only a week. I've said this about Jaguars making their names other places, coming close to getting rings, actually getting rings, putting themselves in Oscar consideration. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Jalen Ramsey. For something like that, don't be entirely in a rush to bench him yet. Just keep him in mind, he says painfully.
Oh no, he's staying on my bench because my RB1 and RB2 were Mark Ingram and Devin Singletary. Ingram I expect to bounce back. Singletary had a solid performance against the Jets.
All right, so my addition to the hype train, I'm carrying him on. He's going to be in my carry-on luggage.
Isn't it Eric's turn? If we're going...
Go ahead, Eric. I thought you went. My bad.
No, that's okay. The one, now granted, if you're in an IDP league, you can freely ignore this. But if you're one of those who are still steadfast in a team defense, especially with the moves that they made in the offseason, moves that even I was excited about to an extent, I'm adding on the hype train to the Minnesota defense. Yes, the game against Green Bay was a scoregami, but you talk about a group that was just picked apart. I believe it was in the ESPN leagues, it would have netted you -9 points.
It was -6 on Yahoo.
Yeah. It was -9 because they was in one of my lineups.
Right, -9 on ESPN, -6 if you're using with the Yahoo scoring, giving up 43 points to Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. I mean, I know with the lack of practicing, I expected a slow start, but I didn't even anticipate this.
So what you're saying is we're talking about practice?
We are talking about practice. Not a game, practice.
This one I'm about to discuss. I want to list my two before we go back over to Harry and Eric to finish their final two. This one breaks my heart. This one hits really close to home because when you see this person on your fantasy league or if he's sitting there and you're waiting to draft, this is a top 3 pick. And yeah, it's a homer pick for me. But when he nets 15 attempts for 6 rushing yards and 6 receptions for 60 yards, for a total of 6.6 points. It's heartbreaking to know that that's the stat line for Saquon Barkley of the New York Giants. Like I said, it hurts my heart having to talk about Saquon like this. But I mean, he was the epitome of hype train this week. A top 3 pick that fell flat on his face. Now, granted, he did play Pittsburgh. They do have one of the upper tier defenses in the league, but I mean, he just looked average out there. He didn't look like his explosive self. The line didn't help matters any either, but yeah, I mean, he was abysmal this week. Now, the next one, I'm going to go ahead and tackle this one. The next one is one of the premier wide receivers that, we actually had a debate on an episode of the Kickoff about who you would rather own. And this guy did absolutely no favors for me in my defense of him and Deshaun Watson. And that's Brandon Cooks. I mean, yes, they went against the defending Super Bowl champs and the Chiefs, who has a highly underrated defense. Yes, Robert Taylor, if you listen to this, I will always tell you I've never disputed that they have a highly underrated defense and they don't get the credit that they deserve. But Deshaun Watson and Cooks, I mean, they just couldn't hook up. I mean, he had 2 points. 2. And he's being drafted as a wide receiver 1 to fill out a lot of positions. And I mean, he fell flat on his face. I mean, he was projected in some leagues to get anywhere from 10 to 12 points. I've seen a array. The lowest point total I think I've actually seen him projected was 8 and 3/4, and he got 2. So I mean, they let Hopkins go and they replace him with Cooks, thinking that this is going to be, you're going to make that lateral move, and it didn't happen. So that's my 2 passengers on the hype train. Harry, what's your second one going to be?
Well, I already kind of gave you 2 with Fournette and Mark Ingram, but I can throw a third out there if you want me to.
Well, we got Erik bringing the whole team, so we could throw another one on there for you.
So there is something to be said for salvaging one season in week 1. Because if not for the drive engineered by Ryan Tannehill at the end of the second Monday night game, Steven Gostkowski would be looking for a job today.
So mad on so many levels at that performance. So many levels.
4 missed kicks by Gostkowski on the Monday night game against Denver in Mile High Stadium in Power Field, I think you said it is now, Erik.
Yep, in Power Field at Mile High.
The first time in Gostkowski's career he's missed 4 kicks in a game, 3 field goals and an extra point. If Tannehill doesn't take them down the field at the end of the game, like I said earlier, Gostkowski gets fired this morning.
They've already brought in another kicker. How that's going to develop is going to be interesting, but that one just hurt my wallet.
Speaking of kickers being released, Austin Seibert out in Cleveland too.
Yeah. All right. So a lot of teams don't. A lot of teams have went away and not used kickers in the fantasy world. I got a couple of leagues that still uses kickers, and a lot of places eliminated the kicker for an extra flex position. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you got, just like in real football, you got to rely on a kicker, and he was with that offense. He was highly touted. I was looking up some stats. He was projected to be like 9 points, and he got 4. And a lot of, like I said, a lot of negatives on there for those missed field goals and extra points. So he kind of let a lot of people down because he could have, just like the regular season, he could have destroyed your fantasy season as well. Erik, you got anybody else you want to talk about on the hype train?
Yeah.
That totally was ass.
Yeah. Now, I can't say complete putridness or just total ass, but close enough under the circumstances. I mean, you've got a good contract, you're sitting kind of fat and happy, you got a rookie quarterback you got to look out for, kind of help take the weight off of his shoulders, but overall, you really don't produce. And in my mind, that was just Joe Mixon. Yes, 19 carries for 69 yards, but only one catch for 2 yards and a fumble. And you're talking someone, depending on the system you use, projected to get upwards of 23 points and only cashing in for 9. If you've especially got a good running back, like focused scoring system, or multiple running backs on your roster, you planned around this, and that could have cost you some matchups.
Oh yeah, I mean that Mixon hurt me in a couple of leagues, so I'm definitely all aboard on the hype train on him. So now on the flip side of that, we're going to go straight Ballin. These are the players that have just totally blew out their projected points and kind of annihilated that, surpassed that, and straight up probably carried you to a victory. If you were struggling anywhere else, these players could have carried you to a victory on your own. So I'm going to do this a little different. We're going to go top 3 positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver. We're going to each pick one. So Harry, we're going to start with you. Who's your Ballin quarterback of this week?
My Ballin quarterback for this, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was actually looking him up right while you were getting ready to introduce the segment here. The stat line overall is not super impressive until you get to the fourth quarter. 20 of 36, 242 yards, no interceptions, and a fumble lost. But here's the big stats to consider here. 3 fourth quarter touchdown passes for Mitchell Trubisky, quarterback, Chicago Bears.
Actually, the number 3 ranked quarterback in fantasy this week. He's in most leagues he is setting at number 3 overall at the quarterback position.
And if you told me you had Mitchell Trubisky as your 3rd ranked quarterback after week 1, you're a goddamn liar.
I'm right there with you. I don't know what happened, and I don't want to speculate all the reports coming out of Chicago that happened today. And we'll talk about more of that tomorrow night on the kickoff. But Erik,
YouTube Network.
Erik, who's your straight Ballin quarterback?
I know it's going to be a bit homer, but considering the Colts' defense, especially with Leonard at linebacker and how they always seem to give the Jaguars fits. For a season opener, you complete 95% of your passes. It was flat out just real Minshew mania in front of the few fans that were able to attend at TIAA Bank. 19 for 20. 19 for 20. Yes, not a lot of yards at only 173, but 3 touchdown passes, and to help boost your run game, 5 carries for 19 yards. To go out with that kind of performance out of nowhere, especially in what a lot of folks regarded as an upset win in Jacksonville, Minshew definitely balled out this week.
He's currently the, I think, number 5 quarterback. Looking at this, he's definitely right around that cusp of being 5, depending on your scoring. Now, I couldn't decide, so it's my show. I'm going to take 2. Neither one, which I'm surprised neither one of you suggested. I mean, straight up, both of these guys carried. We're going to actually talk about one of the wide receiver that benefited from one of them a little later on. But my two top quarterbacks this week is Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. I mean, both of them put up damn near 40 points alone, which is very surprising. So, yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, to see these quarterbacks straight ball out. So, yeah, definitely going to go with those two as my quarterback picks. Now, let's take a look here. Yeah, I mean, Russell Wilson's number one, Aaron Rodgers 2. We'll go down the top 10 here. Russell Wilson 1, Rodgers 2, Kyler Murray was 3, Lamar is 4, your boy Josh Allen, Harry, is number 5.
First career 300-yard passing game.
Cam Newton is 6, Matt Ryan 7, Trubisky 8, Kirk Cousins 9, and somehow Watson still made it into the top 10 against that Kansas City. I think that was a lot of
time.
Yep.
What's funny is, Minshew was ranked number 13. Does anybody want to guess who number 14 is?
Daniel Jones.
No.
Because you asked.
Eric,
Is Mahomes all the way down at 14?
That is correct. So Robert Taylor, your top quarterback, is the 14th best, behind Gardner Minshew. So, Eric, you can rub that in anytime you wish. So I expect to see poster boards of that. Now, moving on to our running backs. Who was straight balling for you guys in the running back position this week?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Mr. Mahomes here because it's a perfect. I'm going to go ahead and tie the two shows together. Segue for my pick here. I wanted to be upset at Robert. I wanted to be mad at him. I was pissed off because he kept riding this guy's chalk just like he was with Mahomes last year. And then the son of a bitch went out and had 138 yards in his first NFL game as a starter with a score for 19.8 points from the running back position. And that would be who obviously was probably a high draft pick in a lot of leagues given the offense that he's around. But for a rookie to go out and put up these numbers in his first performance in the NFL, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was straight balling out.
Oh, yeah. And a little fact, just so you guys know, the only running back to surpass the century mark in week 1 was CEH. Which
slight addendum to that I will get to when you're done, because it ties into my pick.
All right, go ahead, Eric.
The second running back to go over 100 yards week 1. And
last night.
Yep, also had 3 catches for 15 yards. You gotta feed him, even though I can't stand him. I wish he would come on home, but Derrick Henry. I mean, to really respond with some of the passing struggles early on. 31 carries for 116. Another one on a great contract. Well-earned, well-deserved. Derrick Henry, he was eating last night.
Yeah, I didn't see I didn't have the stats from last night in front of me, so that's why I said that I didn't acknowledge Henry, because I didn't know that he went over 100 yards last night, because everybody knows how much I show prep. So
that's why we're here.
My running back is one that has a lot of hype to him. Last year, his rookie season, came out, had some flashes of brilliance, was on a garbage team, but showed that he is a formidable NFL running back. And I mean, for 93 yards on the ground, 46 receiving yards, I mean, Josh Jacobs carried I mean, he went for 33.9 fantasy points. I mean, that is impressive. I mean, that's above Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott. The number 4 and 5 is really interesting, Harry. It is actually your number 4 is both of these are your new team Who Dis, and Malcolm Brown and Hines at the 4 and 5 spot with 24.5 and 23.3 points respectively.
Yeah, like I said, and expect Nyheim Hines' performances in Indianapolis only to continue to trend upward with Marlon Mack out for the season now.
All right, so we're going to move on to our last position that we're going to discuss on Straight Ballin, and that's your wide receiver. Who do you guys got there? Harry, we'll start with you.
Okay, it would have been nice to know that we were doing 3 positions before the show started, because I kind of had to do a rush job on this, but it's okay. I made it work. Erik, you know how you went homer for your quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
Well, allow me to do the same at the wide receiver position. 6 catches on 8 targets for 70 yards and a touchdown for a total of 19 fantasy points for wide receiver 2 in Buffalo now, John Brown.
Yeah, he's finished week 1 listed as the 14th ranked wide receiver with 16 points. So, yeah, I mean, I figured, I mean, Harry, I figured, when you said a rush job, I figured you would have took some of the low-hanging fruit here. So, Erik, I expect you to at least take one of them.
Well, because for someone who, again, a little bit buried on the depth chart, but took advantage and showed out, especially in my mind, given the offensive performance. Only 4 catches on only 6 targets, yes, but 96 yards and a touchdown. The one, the only, Marquez Valdez Scantling.
Yeah, who comes in at your wide receiver 11. But you want I'm going to take the low hanging fruit. You guys are just leaving it for me, so I'm going to take it. Who was the rightful contributor to that Green Bay offense? And that's Devontae Adams. I mean, 14 catches, 156 yards, 2 touchdowns for a total of 34.6 points. I mean, yeah, that's wide receiver 1 overall. And that puts you up there to being he's actually the number 1 fantasy player of the week. Him, the top 3 are Adams, Josh Jacobs, and Aaron Rodgers. So I mean, that's a pretty formidable thing. I mean, you got Aaron Rodgers throwing you the ball, who threw for 4 touchdowns on 364 yards. 2 of them went to you, and half of his passing yards go to you. So I mean, that's pretty impressive. So we got. I mean, that's pretty nice. Now we're about to close out the show, and I want to end it. I had a somber note that I want to close it out on and we're going to talk about the bad beats that we've seen across our leagues. I experienced 2 of them myself. One, I lost by exactly 0.03. Yeah, that 3 yards. I lost by 3 yards in one league. 3 yards from a running back, especially. And those running backs happen to be, and when I tell you this running back core, you're going to laugh. Those running backs were James Conner, Derrick Henry, and Melvin Gordon. And I lost. We're going to talk about Melvin Gordon because he was the sole reason of my second bad beat, where I lost by 1.8. His fumble for -2 lost me that. So I was actually up by 0.2. His fumble lost me that. So, yeah, that's my bad beats. So, did you guys see any bad beats in any of your leagues that, you want to bring to the table?
Honestly, I got my ass kicked in my main league this week. I'm not going to lie. My running back's super underwhelmed. I did make a last-minute decision to start John Brown over Larry Fitzgerald, and I'm happy that I did because, like I said earlier, Brown kind of showed out. But I definitely have to do something to upgrade my running back core because I lost by like 40 points. Yeah. To be fair, in the league that I'm in, Mahomes underperformed as well. His projections by a good 12 points too, so that didn't help matters.
Erik, did you see any bad beats?
For me, we explained this kind of leading up off air to the episode. Yeah, for the first time really in my football life, I slept in so late. We're talking 3:30 that I didn't get a chance to fully set my lineups. Now, granted, in a couple of my leagues, it wouldn't have made a difference because one of them I got blown out by a little over 100. But had I just subbed in for Dede Westbrook and Raquel Armstead, who were both out, had I put in the right players that I had sitting on my bench, I would have won in my main league. So, yeah, awfully disappointed in myself for that one. Can't even blame the players.
All right, yeah. So, myself, I just discussed the bad beats. And I've come to realize that, having 20 plus leagues is a bit tiresome.
You think?
So it runs me pretty ragged. So yeah, definitely with the injuries to Michael Thomas and James Conner, a couple of my teams are suffering there. Luckily I had no stakes. I had no shares of some of the other key injuries, and like Ballin Mack, Njoku, who's on the hour now, Mims from the Jets, hi Randy, has also got placed on the hour. Le'Veon Bell just got placed. So, we expected this. And, this is something that, I'm sure we'll be bringing up tomorrow night, bringing to the table with our anchorman when he's, talking about key injuries and stuff. And as well as our reactions to week one. So now, with that being said, we want to close out the show with, if you guys tuned in, you guys noticed that we...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
If you guys tuned in, you will notice that, a couple weeks ago, Sean was unable to attend his draft, and he turned the reins over to us. and
kicker in the first round.
He let us draft his team. So weekly we will recap Sean's team. So week one was a scary one for him. Definitely was on the edge of our seats because we actually pulled out the win for him. 94 to 92.84. So 1.16 victory.
You know why we were on the edge of our seats here? Because he didn't start Raheem Mostert like he should have.
Well, I understand why he didn't start him. I don't know who he would have benched for Mostert. If you look at it, you're not going to bench Elliott, Mixon.
Given the way Mixon played, you should have.
Yeah. So, you don't have a flex position. You play 3 wide receivers and a tight end. So, you would have had to bench Elliott or Mixon. And going into those matchups, I really don't see how Mostert would have fit logically, to unseat one of those in a starting lineup. But we are off to week 2, where we have a really tight matchup versus another 1-0 team in Gary, who is projected to beat us by 0.5.
You're going down, Vaughn.
So we have. I'll break down the matchups. I mean, it's a pretty solid matchup. We've got Breeze versus Wilson, Elliott versus Kamara, Mixon versus Carson, Diggs versus Julio, Tyreek versus Goodwin, Hollywood versus Ridley, Waller versus Ingram, and the Chiefs D versus the Ravens D. So I think that this is going to be a barn burner, and I think, honestly, those projections being as tight as that, it's going to be very, very interesting. So I want to keep an eye on this. We'll update everybody. We'll actually have 2 games to update everybody with when we join you on the next with the next time. Now, with that being said, any final thoughts from you, Harry?
No, I mean, I'm
okay,
happy.
That's fine. I had to get.
I'm happy that we were finally able to get the fantasy podcast off the ground. Honestly, if we could keep this to like 45 minutes to an hour, we could probably do it on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to do like real deep dives. This is just a good quick hit. Get our takes, our fantasy football insights. We all are very active in the fantasy football world. Maybe we can even get some picks and information from the 4th member of the Kickoff, Randy, and get some. He might not be able to join us on the show, but maybe he can send us some picks that that he wants us to some players that he wants to talk about and everything. So we still have we'll have a shrine built to him or something.
Yeah, we'll still have the full on educated debate when it comes to football over on the Kickoff, but this is going to be more of your statistical analysis portion of the podcast for us.
Yeah. So with that being said, Harry, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Erik, do you got any final thoughts?
Oh, these are going to as always be the toughest weeks in the schedule, especially with the lack of preseason like we've only seen in a couple of different instances. If you're going into, say, week 4 at maybe 1-2, 2-1, treading water, don't freak out.
So, with that being said, I'm going to close everything out and tell you, let you guys plug everything where you guys can find us, and then I'll wrap up the show. Harry, where can they find you?
At HEB the Eagle on Twitter, if you guys want to talk fantasy football there. Harry Broadhurst on Facebook, if you guys want to talk fantasy football there. In addition, you guys can check out the Kickoff every Wednesday night here. We record. We're usually up on Thursday mornings on the W2M website and on all your favorite podcast listening services. Erik, where can people find you online?
At Squid Sportshead on Twitter, talking fantasy football or a variety of other subjects. If you also prefer Facebook, where you don't see me start stuff, you can find me look for Erik Watkins. You should all know the drill, or especially if you're new, that's okay as well. Look for the guy, cartoon, in the Jaguars gear, in the recliner holding a glass of wine next to the pile of laundry. You found me. Let's just say that there are some other places that you can find me, but you'll have to slide into my DMs and undergo a vetting process. And for those of you who will be listening to the next episode of the Kickoff, I got myself a brand new nickname in that realm. Stay tuned.
All right. So you can always look me up, at W2M Chairman on Twitter. For all fantasy football advice, sit starts, I'll be tackling those. I got to work for 2 hours the next 2 Sundays, mandatory overtime. But hey, who says I can't multitask? Be setting lineups, offering sit start question answers as I do pretend to work. So with that being said, I heard something. This is for you, Eric. You know, I heard you want to get somebody at the Georgia Dome on the 50-yard line while the Dirty Birds kick some trees. So, with that being said, I am your host. This is the Kickoff. Watch Your Fantasy here on the W2M Network. You've been listening to a bunch of fucktards. And tune in tomorrow for more debauchery on the Kickoff, where we discuss everything non-fantasy that's going on in the NFL. So, you guys have a good night. And if you message me on Twitter, that is my other one. I'll probably tell you got to fuck yourself.